Can't even see I'm wearing a frilly shirt.
Child. Anyway, so
Astrology? Nah, I take responsibility for my actions. Time isn't even real, so how can astrology be real? Are you someone who hears people talk like this about astrology while actually knowing what astrology is? And you're just sitting there like, oh my god, that's not what astrology is? Well, you're not alone. Or similarly, are you someone that hears things like, oh, you're a Gemini, we can't be friends? And you think, wow, astrology is so dumb. People are really that judgmental. Please keep watching because I promise that's not what astrology is. Number one, I'm going to be constantly looking off screen to read my script because I speak incoherently. So I avoided making this video for a really long time because it's something I'm really passionate about. So I just kind of thought, I'll let people believe what they want, like it doesn't really concern me. But more and more it's come to my attention that most people's views and opinions on astrology come from misconceptions or false information, not even necessarily astrology skeptics or non-believers, but so many people not actually knowing what astrology is because of so much misinformation out there. And it wasn't until Curtis Connor, someone who I deeply love and respect, don't get it twisted, he started his video, one of his most recent videos, with his opinions on astrology that unfortunately a lot of people have. That like astrology is just kind of an excuse for people's behavior or this obscure system that labels people and puts people in one box. Let me roll the clip.
We like putting people where we think they should go. That's why horoscopes exist. Why spend the time to get to know someone and find out all the little details that make them unique when you could just boil them down to the month that they were born in? Which is kind of weird. I'll say it. Oh, you're a Libra? So that means your parents probably had unprotected sex in January? Yeah. That's hot as fuck. But obviously humans are way too complex to be simplified into a zodiac sign.
That was kind of the thing that made me go, okay, it's no longer about me and my feelings. It felt wrong not to say something, even if no one listens. So let's just break that down today, shall we? Disclaimer. I am not speaking for all astrologers or astrology lovers. This is just my personal views and opinions. And I'm not even speaking to astrology skeptics, like people who don't believe in what astrology actually is. I respect people straight up not believing in the existence of astrology itself. That's not what this video is about. It's about how so many people dislike it and don't believe in it based off of false information of what astrology even is. So for context, I'm not an astrologer, but I've been into astrology for almost 10 years now. I've been learning about it, studying it, putting these beliefs into practice for many, many years. So I like to think I have some fully formed and informed opinions on the subject. This has been a part of my life for a really long time, so just hear me out. Astrology as we know it, meaning Western astrology that we're going to be talking about today, is Babylonian. Astrology has been observed for thousands of years. It is ancient. It's been observed, practiced, studied in many different ways in Mayan cultures, Hinduism, all over the world, which is one of the reasons it bugs me so much when people reduce it to nothing more than like a shallow personality type thing or like a hydro flask girl hobby or something. Like, this shit is ancient. Astrology has many uses. It is a language in a way. It's almost a mirror into so many different aspects of our existence on this planet. I'm gonna link a TikTok down below of a person getting into more detail about astrology as a whole, because astrology is almost like an umbrella term kind of. But as we are talking about it today on an individual scale, like our individual zodiacal placements and such, astrology is the study of the positions that the planets were in the moment you were born on this earth. A relevant further detail, there is something called the zodiacal belt that wraps around us in the sky. It is an invisible belt of each zodiacal house, aka the first house being Aries, the second house being Taurus, all the way up to 12 houses. The house that the sun was in when you were born is your sun sign, aka when someone asks, what's your sign? And you say, I'm a Libra. That's your sun sign. Stay with me. I'm going somewhere with this. It's important that I kind of info dump on you right now. You may be asking, what proof is there of this belt and stuff like this? What proof is there of this? The thing is, there's not necessarily concrete scientific proof that this exists. The most science says about these types of things is studies show the moon phases tend to affect people's moods. Things like, oh, women's period cycles being in sync with the moon. This is observed in science, but the belief of why this happens, in astrology, we believe they're correlated because we are connected in an unseen way. Science kind of observes these things and goes, but we don't really know why, and astrology kind of comes in and goes, I know why. We are connected. Basically, astrology is a spiritual belief. It's based on spiritual energetic beliefs that we have souls, there's more than meets the eye around us, planets do affect our emotions and subconscious, or at least mirror us, that there are different realms and stuff. It acknowledges the belief that that exists in this universe. Not believing in that, aka what astrology actually is completely valid. You can totally not believe in that. You can say there's no proof. Maybe you're non-spiritual, and that's fine because those are your beliefs. Once again, I'm going to keep emphasizing that this is not a astrology skeptics, this is why you should believe in astrology video. No one can really prove anything is real, especially spiritual things. That's why it's a belief system at the end of the day. It makes sense to your head and feels right to your heart. No matter how many years of observed correlation the heavens have with us humans, whether you see validity in that, it's ultimately your choice, and that's not what I'm arguing today. Saying I don't think the planets affect our personality, etc., that's completely valid, and I respect your opinions. However, that is not what most of the criticism of astrology even is nowadays. It's based off of just misconceptions or people in the astrology community giving it a bad name. So why so many misconceptions? Like I said, astrology is ancient and it's been really popular in the Western world for years. But in the last few years, I'm not sure exactly when it boomed in popularity to the extent that it is now. Definitely in the last 4 years, just from my observation. But basically, it has boomed in popularity. It has never been more popular in the mainstream. Capitalism has never had its grip tighter on astrology merch. And where 6 years ago, if I told the cashier like, oh, the moon is full, so I'm feeling a little bit crazy and I can't really sleep well, she might just stare at me like there's something very wrong with me. Whereas now she might say something like, oh yeah, and so-and-so's in retrograde, so I'm feeling a little weird too. Which is good. I like that a lot of people are destigmatizing astrology and spiritual things and normalizing it. And I'm happy I can talk to my friends about the planets and stuff and they don't think I'm that wacko. However, when anything becomes exceedingly popular in the mainstream, the most pervasive downside is usually bucket loads of misinformation, misconceptions, and people just straight up using it negatively. This is a similar case with tarot cards and any sort of divination, but that's like a whole nother video. So let's talk about these things, shall we? Something I have heard amongst astrology haters a lot is time isn't real, so astrology isn't real. How can I be a blank because I was born on this day if time isn't even real, so astrology's fake? To people who say that time isn't real, therefore astrology isn't real, I agree with you. Yes, time is not real. We made it up as humans, but it's not accurate to say that that denies the validity of astrology. Here's why. Let's say you were born on February 20th, therefore a Pisces. The sun was in a certain position in the sky that day when you were born, making you a Pisces. That's what astrology is. The sun was going to be in that position in the sky. The sun is going to be moving around, we are going to be moving around, the planets move around, whether time exists or not, or whether you believe in astrology or not. That's the basics of what astrology is. Humans created time and a Gregorian calendar as a unit of measurement. That's all we use it for in astrology. The planets are going to be moving around in the sky whether we are here or not. But where they are in the sky at a specific point, we use time to record that. We say on February 20th, the sun is going to be right here, blah, blah, blah. Time is just a tool we use in astrology to determine what people's signs are. But it is based off of where planets are in the sky, which is going to be happening whether we attach any meaning to it. So again, if you think, okay, the sun is there in the sky at this moment in time, but no one can prove it's in the house of Pisces or that affects us in any way, that's a valid belief. But saying astrology isn't real because time isn't real is an oxymoron. Do you see what I mean? I hope I'm using that word correctly. Okay, let's take a deep breath. I know I'm talking a lot about a lot of whimsy things, a lot of words. I honestly think that's one of the reasons so many people have so many misconceptions about astrology and don't fully actually know what it is, because explaining it can be very complex and it can be complicated and confusing. Another one of the most common things I hear about why people hate astrology is you can't just put people's personalities in a box. You can't just label people like that. And even worse, people that do like astrology saying things like, oh, you're a Scorpio? we can't be friends, or something like that. Both of these things are wrong in my opinion, and not what astrology is. The first reason from like an astrological definition point of view why astrology truly has nothing to do with putting people in boxes is firstly because you don't just have a sun sign. You are not just, I was born on December, whatever, so I'm a Capricorn. You have an entire chart of planets and placements that is specific to you and the exact time and day that you were born on this earth. You know how I said your sun sign is determined by the position of the sun at the time you were born? Well, you guessed it. You have a moon sign, you have a Jupiter, you have a Mercury, etc., etc. Which, for a little bit of context, your moon primarily deals with your emotions, Mercury with thoughts and communication, etc., etc. Basically, they coincide with energies that these planets are associated with, just to give you a little bit of information as to why this is relevant. We have houses 1 through 12 in our chart, not to mention conjunctions, sextiles, trines, etc., which are specific things like what the planets were doing in your chart, kind of, on top of the degree and angle of certain planets, not to mention certain asteroids like Chiron, etc., etc., and so much more. I know it kind of sounds like I'm speaking another language, right? It sounds complicated and complex, right? Well, guess what? It is! We as humans are extremely complex and multifaceted. We have sides that only come out with certain people or situations. We have sides no one sees. We change over time. Astrology truly acknowledges and reflects that and gives us insight into that. That's why it's such a useful tool. Astrology is insight, therefore a tool. Anyone trying to judge your entire being based off of your sun sign or your big three, sun, moon, rising, which is very common nowadays, or harshly prejudges you based off of that, truly does not understand astrology. So not only do we see that labeling and harshly prejudging people is not congruent to true astrology, but let's talk about how I mentioned that astrology is insight and an interpretation, and not a tool to label you or put you in a box and define who you are in your life and your destiny and everything. We observe the planets in a person's astrological chart, also called a natal chart, and we interpret how these energies can manifest and reflect in a person's life and in their personality and in their relationships and really anything else in our lives as a human. Planets carry with them patterns and energies. Your natal chart's specific placements have interpretations of how these energies could affect you, or should I say mirror in your life. It is not, this is how you are, this is why, and it's not something you can control. It is in alignment with astrology to acknowledge how nature and nurture affects humans' development and personalities. A simple way of explaining it, let's say that you're a Cancer moon. Let's say when you were born, the moon was in Cancer, making you a Cancer moon. Typical Cancer characteristics are nurturing, loving, emotional, creative, moody, etc. This position being their moon, aka our emotions, we interpret these people as deeply emotional, sensitive, very sentimental, maybe easy criers, something like that. But what if this person grew up in an abusive household, for example? Maybe they were taught that emotions were a sign of weakness, that showing their emotions was unfavorable, it means they've lost in some way. This person could grow up having learned to shut down and neglect their emotions. They might grow to be a person that others perceive as cold, indifferent, or unfeeling. They might not even feel much emotion in themselves anymore. Does this person resonate with and embody their moon side? Are them and others being like, oh yeah, I'm a classic Cancer moon. Oh, that person, they're totally a Cancer moon. No. And I'm not saying that every time you don't relate to something in your natal chart or something you see on social media talking about characteristics of your sign, I'm not saying every time that isn't resonating, it means you had to be abused or something wrong had to happen to make you not relate to it. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just trying to give one clear example of how so many things come into play and so many things are at play in our individual experience that defines who we are or shapes us, as well as where we are in our lives, what point of growth we're at, all of that. There's so much at play that makes it completely normal to not relate to every aspect of your natal chart, or to not relate to every post that are like signs most least likely to smoog wed. A lot of things like that are just for fun, and they're just kind of general interpretations of how astrological signs energy can manifest. It's not supposed to define every sign, and it's normal to not resonate or relate to that. But once again, that's not what astrology is fighting to prove anyway. You can totally be like, I relate to this aspect of my sun sign or this aspect of my chart, but I don't really resonate with the other. That's completely fine. Astrology isn't fighting to shove you in that box. It's just interpretations of things you may or may not resonate with. Furthermore, astrology can also tell us the flavors, so to speak, in which some things can come out or manifest as. Not to some outside force that prevents us from making good choices or a cop-out for our bad behaviors. This is very important. Let me give you an example. Every person has the ability to be toxic. Every sign has the ability to be toxic. Let's say someone was making choices that weren't based off of kindness or empathy. Let's say this person wasn't in a good place. For a simple example, I'm going to illustrate it like this. Geminis are signs that often embody talkative characteristics. They can be witty, great communicators, funny, things like that. A Gemini who is in this position we talked about, choosing not to make the best choices, let's say a situation where they were being a crappy person, their crappiness can manifest as hurting people with their words, gossip, spreading rumors, or being two-faced. A Pisces, for example, choosing not to be a good person, that can manifest as a Pisces being emotionally manipulated, because for context, Pisces generally rule emotions. They're seen as the most emotional sign, and they basically tend to know emotions better than anyone. A Pisces in a position where they were choosing not to be a good person, that can manifest as a Pisces emotionally manipulating people. This person was choosing to be crappy. It was not their sign that made this person be crappy. All astrology can do is tell us the flavor in which that crappiness, that choice to be a bad person, can manifest as. It can inform flavors in which things can come out. I don't know how else to describe it other than like a flavor. A certain flavor of shittiness. Similarly, in a positive way, maybe a Leo, when they're feeling amazing about themselves, they can put on an outfit they love, post a selfie or something like that. Maybe a very service-oriented sign like a Virgo or Pisces. Maybe on a day they're feeling great, that might manifest as cooking a meal, an amazing meal for people that they love. And again, these are just general examples I'm using just to illustrate my point. People are going to choose to be good people. People are going to choose to make bad choices. Astrology does not compel anyone to do anything against their will, and it does not excuse people's bad actions. At the end of the day, we have absolute free will. Astrology can tell us about our propensities. It can inform, influence, or mirror, not control us. So we can easily see how prejudging someone based off their sign or any aspect of their chart, to the extent you won't even get to know them, or you make harsh assumptions about them, or even be like, oh, you're a Cancer, you must be so nice, let's be friends immediately. Or be like, oh, it's okay, he's screaming at me, he's an Aries. We can clearly see how that's an unhealthy use of astrology, right? I'll give you a personal example from when I was younger, and it'll help me kind of segue into the point I'm trying to make. I had a situation where I was younger where I became friends with someone whose sun sign was a Scorpio. Scorpios can be secretive people. They're known to have a tendency to be loyal, trustworthy, they'll take your secrets to the grave, that type of person. Those are general energies that we observe in Scorpios. I was very naive and young, and I made the mistake of confiding secrets in that person before I even really got to know them, because I thought, oh, they're a Scorpio, I can trust them. Needless to say, my secrets were not kept, and there was no trust whatsoever in that situation. It is doing yourself and others a disservice to prejudge people's moral fiber or entire personality based off their sign or any aspect of their astrology before you even get to know them. Just because in astrology we can perceive propensities or potential for goodness does not mean people will choose goodness. There is nothing wrong, in my opinion, with being like, oh, this person is a Pisces, I wonder if they're very creative. Oh, this person's a Capricorn, maybe they're a hard worker. But that's not what so many people are doing in the astrology community. People are straight up defining who people are and their behaviors based off of one aspect of their natal chart or their big three, literally before they've even gotten to know them at all. To end this video, I just want to talk about one more thing, and that's how a lot of people don't like astrology because they don't like to be told why they are how they are, and like, oh, I don't like to read because I'm a Libra, I just like that because it's me and it's just because I do. And yeah, that's true, like I agree with that, but once again, astrology can just tell us which planets or whatever we are mirroring. It is you and your unique personality and your unique choices, but in astrology, we just believe that that is all connected and mirrors each other. So try to take that with a grain of salt and not transfix on that being what astrology is trying to do. It's just something we observe at the end of the day, and interpretations are subjective. We create our reality after all. So please, I'm just begging everyone to not judge people's entire existence based off of their sun sign or any aspect of their astrology before they get to know them. And I also beg of people to actually learn what astrology is before you decide that you hate it, or judging what it is based off of basically bad eggs in the astrology community. Let's just be nice and respectful to each other. This video is coming from a place of respect and just wanting misinformation not to be floating around out there. And if you watch this whole thing, thank you so much. Please subscribe.